Utah Board of Oil, Gas, and Mining, our briefing session on October the 28th, 2015 for the record. And Mr. Baza, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to the meeting in Salt Lake City, the board's monthly meeting. We've got a few briefing items for you this morning, so I'll go ahead and launch into them. First of all, before we start on the regular agenda, there are a few introductions I'd like to make. One is that we hired a new person in our audit program. And her name is Beverly Weiser. Beverly, if you would stand up. Beverly comes to us from the Property Tax Commission, where she performed tax assessments, appraisals, inspections, and audits of oil and gas properties. And we had to work long and hard to find somebody who had some oil and gas background for this program. She's worked in areas of gas gathering systems, metalliferous and non-metalliferous mining, and gas plants. She graduated from Utah State University and the Huntsman School of Business. She lives in Farmington. She enjoys family life with her husband and 4 married children. So we welcome Beverly to our oil and gas program. I would mention at this time too that the audit program the audit section within the oil and gas program serves a vital function. I'm going to recognize Randy Thackeray. Randy, if you would stand up. Thanks. Randy is our lead auditor within that section. There's 2 people basically. But people often ask, well, how do you know that these companies are producing the volumes that they're reporting on? And Randy's job is to audit individual companies, look at their records, look at run tickets, look at gas plant statements, things like that, and ensure that, yes, the volumes that we are getting from the operators being reported by them are accurate. Now, there's a separate auditing function at the Tax Commission that looks at the money side. In other words, how much the state is getting paid in terms of taxes. But our job within the oil and gas program is to make sure that the volumes being reported to us are accurate. And so Randy does that. There's a schedule set out every year of companies that he will visit or audit and ensure that those volumes are being reported accurately. So that's Randy and Beverly for you.
Welcome.
Second person I'd like you to recognize is we had a retirement in the division earlier in the summer. Clint Dworshak, who was handling our compliance and enforcement activities within the oil and gas program, retired. So in his place, we have just recently hired Josh Payne. Josh, you would stand up. Josh has actually been working with us for quite a while as an engineering technician, and he also has served very gloriously and honorably in the military, has taken several tours over to Afghanistan, and if any of you are interested, you can visit with Josh about how to fly a helicopter. But Josh is now going to be our compliance and enforcement manager. Lastly, I'd like you to meet someone who is here from the Office of Energy Development. He's here to observe your board hearing this morning. He's a new face for OED, but he is now the manager of conventional energy, and that is Jordan Clark. Jordan, you want to step up and
Sure.
Maybe tell the board a little bit about your responsibility?
Sure. Just joined the team about 2 weeks ago with Dr. Laura Nelson. I'll be working with the team to work with the state agencies, promoting a lot of the business development and coordinating a lot of the state programs, to work with a lot of the rural communities with a lot of the projects that are ongoing, and state initiatives within those regions, and working with a lot of the policies and goals that are already in place with OED and the governor's office. So as I learn and gain a grasp of a lot of those initiatives. We'll work with the stakeholders in those counties, and anxious to work with state agencies and incoming businesses and existing businesses. So I've been able to get out to Roosevelt and be down in Price this next week working on some coal grants, so federal coal grants. So we're excited to get out to these rural communities to see what we can do to help them out. So thank you.
So the first item on our briefing agenda, and this is tag team with the second item, is a report of the meetings that John Rogers and I attended in Oklahoma City in September.
John, can I interrupt you a minute?
Sure.
We'd like you to first talk about this great award that you got. I don't know if you're all aware, Susan sent it to us, but you received one of the highest national awards that that organization gives. Would you talk to us about that a little bit?
Sure. The E.W.
Humble as you are, this is a forced requirement, so
The E.W. Marland Award is an annual award that the Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission gives out, and it recognizes people in public service. They do their annual Chairman's Stewardship Awards for companies who have gone beyond the mark in terms of environmental stewardship. But the E.W. Marland Award is a specific award for an individual because of the work they've done in the government sector. So, you know, this was all a deep, dark secret to me until I showed up at the meeting. I've seen the awards given in the past. I've always acknowledged that the people receiving those awards were very impressive people who have been with IOGCC and their state organizations for many years. So to give you a hint of how it happened, during the joint opening session, you know, it's a fairly large room. We were combined with the Groundwater Protection Council in Oklahoma City for this meeting, and so I'm going to guess there were probably several hundred people in the room. So I spotted John Rogers, and I went and sat next to him, and we went through and listened to the various presentations during the session, and then they got to the presentation of the E.W. Marland Award. Somehow the slide presenter who was doing it got a little ahead of himself, and my picture flashed up on the screen, and I looked over at John Rogers and says, "What is that all about?" And he said, "Well, now you know." So apparently John and several other staff members knew about this beforehand, but there was a nice presentation of the award. My wife was even in on it. She provided some pictures from my past life. They were all looked pretty good at that point. But it's an award that's given out every year, and one of the things I had to say when I received the award, I said, this doesn't mean I'm at the end of my career. I have many more years of service to give. So that's about it, Mr. Chairman.
well, we congratulate you, and you brought a great honor to Utah and to the division and to yourself. So
Thank you.
we thank you for your service.
Okay, well, thank you. And the meetings in Oklahoma City, as I said, were a joint meeting of the Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission and the Groundwater Protection Council and another group which is called the National Rural Water Association. Now, they're a larger group than either of us. They have several thousand members across the United States, but we were co-located. The IOGCC meetings were mainly held in what was called the Skirvin Hotel, which is a historic, and I learned, haunted hotel in Oklahoma City. And then the Groundwater Protection Council and the National Rural Water Association met in what is called the Cox Convention Center. So I'm going to give you a rundown on the IOGCC meeting, and then John was also there, and he attended mostly the Groundwater Protection Council meeting. But the IOGCC meeting, they're always good. Chairman Gill has been there several times in the past. And they're always educational. We learn a lot about what's going on in other states on the oil and gas sector. This time, the meeting started out with the roundtable of state regulatory agencies, which includes every oil and gas producing state in the U.S. And we heard similar stories from everyone that, you know, even though production had not yet slipped in most of the states, the drilling activity was way down, as much as anywhere from 60 to 75% decline in most states. Now, for a state like North Dakota, where they had a couple of hundred rigs running, now they're down to maybe 50 or 60 rigs running. They're still got some activity going on. For Utah, that represents where we were about a year ago, or maybe a year and a half ago, where we had 24, 25 rigs running. Now we're down to 4 or 5 statewide. So even though the percentages are the same in Utah, I think it's a much more significant drop for us, because it's difficult when you see drilling activity drop off like that, and you know that investment capital is going to flee to the place where people can make the most money. There are some challenges in Utah, and we expressed that during our report as well. Some of the important things that we saw from the meetings, there was a joint report that both IOGCC and Groundwater Protection Council produced, which is a report, a primer on induced seismicity. And I think I saw John handing copies of that out to you this morning. That was released at this meeting. There was also a compendium of best practices in horizontal drilling and spacing that one of the IOGCC committees produced, and that was also released as of this meeting. We don't have hard copies of that, but it's available online at the IOGCC website.
And could you forward that to some of us that
Gladly,
be interested
yeah,
in that?
no problem.
This just the site, the website that we'd go to.
Absolutely, we'll take care of that. At the joint opening session, we heard from various dignitaries, including the mayor of Oklahoma City. There was a video message from our own Governor Herbert, who gave up the reign of his chairmanship for IOGCC to the new incoming chairman, Governor Fallon of Oklahoma City, or Oklahoma. She reported as well. We heard from Michael Teague, the Oklahoma Secretary of Energy and Environment. Dr. Paula Gant of the U.S. Department of Energy talked about the era of energy abundance that we seem to be in the United States. Peter Gravatt of the Office of Drinking Water with the U.S. EPA talked a little bit about the impressions around the country that he's gained of the public perspective of EPA and kind of the work that they have to do to maybe win back some of the public support that they've had in the past as an agency. Larry Bengal of Arkansas talked about the state's first initiative and the State Oil and Gas Regulatory Exchange, which we've actually participated in a couple of ways in Utah. We had our horizontal drilling workshop last December here in Salt Lake City that involved other states, which was a regulatory exchange function. And then we also underwent a recent peer review of our UIC program, which was a product of the regulatory exchange as well. Mike Pake, the Executive Director of the Groundwater Protection Council, addressed us. Jerry Baker of IOGCC talked about the National Inspector Certification Program and also an inspectors forum that has been conducted, first of all, with the meeting in Salt Lake City, and our own Dan Jarvis of the Oil and Gas Program helped facilitate that nationwide inspectors forum. And then we heard from Rick Simmers of Ohio, who, as I said, introduced and released the copy of the induced seismicity primer. So a lot of things happened at IOGCC. There was one resolution that was produced that talked about Class 6 injection wells and the ability for states to effectively regulate that, even though the EPA has retained jurisdiction of that. Class 6 wells are wells that are being used for carbon sequestration. And frankly, the only state that's doing that in a big way is the only states are North Dakota and Texas. So we may have that in Utah someday. We have worked with DEQ to coordinate on rulemaking, but we're not prepared to initiate a rulemaking until we see more activity developed in that area in Utah. With that, I will answer any questions you may have on the IOGCC, but now I would turn some time over to John Rogers, who will talk about his impressions of the Groundwater Protection Council meeting.
Good morning, Chairman Gill and members of the board. Much of what I'm going to talk about, John has touched on, because some of these meetings were together and some were separate. But the main things I wanted to talk about was first the SOGR initiative, and that's part of the state's first initiative that the states are going to be having reviews. And SOGR stands for State Oil and Gas Regulatory Exchange, and this is becoming more of an issue as states review themselves. We had one, like John said, just a couple months ago on our Class 2 injection program. The report's not been finalized, but we hear good things about that. And like John said, our own Jan Jarvis is going to go to Nebraska to do a review on their program, because they've been ordered by their legislature to have an outside review. Our review consisted of two GWPC members, 2 states, which was Oklahoma and Indiana, and 1 EPA observer. So this is something that the states are doing, and they had discussions about to get this more outgoing so more people can get involved in the SOGR program. Another issue strongly represented there was Frac Focus 3.0. You've heard of this. Obviously, Frac Focus is what we adopted in our rule for hydraulic fracturing. It keeps evolving into a better and better state because the public wants more, states want more, and really where this software program or this database is right now is they're reducing human input error. Before there was people are putting chemical names in and people can spill chemicals a variety of different ways. For now it's using a drop-down box, which is eliminating the human error. It's enhanced searchability and extraction. Now that is a sensitive issue because now as more data is there, there's the opposite anti-hydraulic fracturing individuals that are searching this in great detail, so they have the ammunition, so it's there, and so that's why we have to be extra cautious of having the correct information in there, and that's what this program now is evolving to. And then there's the updated educational information in the program itself, so if you see a chemical there, you can find out what it really is. Sometimes it may look rather frightening, but they have a very strong component of education in there. John mentioned the inspector training program. It's called TopCore. It's three strong energy universities, Penn State, Colorado School of Mines, and University of Texas are involved with that. We had 2 of our inspectors go over last month to a training program in Golden, Colorado at the Colorado School of Mines, and we're going to be continually doing that, and the ultimate goal is to have this online so there can be an inspector program that people can take online. We mentioned the potential injection induced seismicity associated with oil and gas development. The induced seismicity primer, I gave each one of these. This is, and to tell you what this is, it's not telling you how to control induced seismicity, it's telling you what to look out for. And the main things in there are monitoring, risk management, communication, and education. Just to tell you, just last night I was at a sporting event and I'm sitting next to a friend of mine that had been traveling. He says, well, I met some people from Oklahoma. And they said that this hydraulic fracturing is causing all these earthquakes in Oklahoma. I said, no, let me tell you how that really is. And he said, no, these people are adamant that this hydraulic fracturing is causing earthquakes. So this is what this is about, to tell you what the difference between injection and hydraulic fracturing. We know what that is, but many of the public don't understand what's going on there. So this is an excellent document. Look through it, and it'll give you an idea of what's going on, because it is big news nowadays. Other things that happened in the GWPC, they had forums on abandoned oil and gas well programs. Kentucky, Arkansas, and Kansas presented what they're doing there. I think we have a strong program here of addressing that. They had basic principles of ground flow occurrence and transport and fate of contaminants in groundwater. And another issue that is strongly being supported by the U.S. Department of Energy is the EIA. That stands for Energy Information Administration. They're trying to get this group together to organize and get all data from states to get information on oil and gas production and also water production and water injection, so they can have an idea what's going on. You'd think that'd be a simple thing, but to get all the states on the same page is not easy. So that's the process they're working through. And also there's a there's a Harvard law professor. Her name is Kate Konchik, and she is over the Environmental Policy Initiative there. And I would call her a anti-hydraulic fracturing proponent. So she is now gathering all this information in Frac Focus, and so she was kind of what we would call sort of the opposition, but now she's been invited to these forums to present her ideas. So it's kind of like, you know, have her there, have her talk to her, and it's really been helpful to be able to interact with her to see where her issues are and correct her rather than have her be distant. So she's been invited to many of these forums and presented at each GWPC conference, and so it's becoming more of a win-win situation. We understand what she's looking at and her weaknesses, and she points out weaknesses in the Frac Focus program, so we can sort of work that out. So it was an interesting conference. Usually these conferences are held separately, but this is the first time and I'm aware of that both GWPC and IOGCC were together, so you kind of had to pick and choose where you were going to go, but it was a well worth being there. Also, GWPC is responsible for the RBDMS. I keep throwing acronyms out there. That's the database we use in our new database program, and we're going through that, which will probably be ready by next year. And RBDMS stands for Risk-Based Data Management System, and so that's kind of the program that is used by most oil and gas states, and so that's very much a part of GWPC. So, any questions you may have?
Board members, any questions?
How many states have signed on with that Frac Focus situation by now?
I'd say majority. I don't think California has, and I don't think, I honestly don't know, but it's majority of them. I'd have to say by number. Do you know?
Well, I think by number, there are about 30 oil and gas producing states in the U.S., and I think probably 24 or 25 are using RBDMS and then have also adopted Frac Focus as a reporting mechanism.
I think there were 22 at the meeting I went to, so it's picked up a little bit now.
It's kind of interesting. I don't know if any of you knew Al Walker. He worked at USTAR. He has since transferred or changed jobs and moved to California, and he's now working in their UIC program. And California has always been a resistant to RBDMS and Frac Focus, and he called me just the other day saying, I got here and this is just a mess, we need to do something. And so they're thinking about adopting this, and so sometimes it takes a different set of eyes from the outside looking what they have there. So California may get on board with this too.
I would mention that John is pretty modest too, but he worked on one of the committees that helped produce the induced seismicity report. It was called the Traffic Light Committee, with the idea that the regulatory systems should be set up so that you have the ability, when you approve an injection well, to say, this is a green light, or there's some factors that we need to worry about, this is a yellow light, or in some cases even say, we can't allow this to happen, that's a red light. So John spent a lot of time on conference calls and on the phone helping to produce this product.
Yeah, what's neat about this is, Ohio, Oklahoma, Arkansas, this is a big issue, induced seismicity. And, I hate to say this, but, well, I don't hate to say it, but right now we don't have an issue here. And we're thinking that's great, but if it does happen, we'll be ready for it. And really, the process is, if there's no induced seismicity, it's not an area problem, just go ahead and don't worry about it. If there's something happening, proceed cautiously. And then like in Arkansas, where they saw a definite problem with the injection of water and earthquakes, they were injecting into basement faults they didn't know about, and when they found out about it, they just stopped and moved away from it, and the earthquake stopped in that area. So it kind of gives you the ability to be flexible rather than just say, oh, we need ground monitoring, we need this everywhere we are, so we're adapting to each local area as the needs come about. So let's knock on wood, we don't see it here. Hey, you let us know. Okay.
Thanks, John. We'll move on in the briefing agenda. Item 3 is the request for your approval of the board hearing schedule for calendar year 2016. We provided you, just distributed a copy of that last month with the idea that if you saw any problems or conflicts or things you wanted to bring up in terms of the hearing schedule, you could let us know. But without any modification, we would ask for your assent to go ahead and publish this now as the hearing schedule for next year. Now, we recognize that just like we did this year, there may be some need to, as we get closer to a hearing, to adjust that for major events or things that come up. But I think for the time being, we would like to publish this as our hearing schedule for calendar year 2016.
Board members, could you take some time this morning to look at that and see if you have any major conflicts? We know there will always be a few come up. Pardon me. We just want to make sure we have a quorum. With that, though, can we come back in an hour and address this just before the at the beginning of the 9 o'clock time, or do you know enough about your schedules right now that okay then, seeing none, let's move forward. We'll I don't think we need a vote on it, but if we do.
As long as you're comfortable with us publishing this, this is what we'll put out.
Okay, we are comfortable.
Okay. We have a few things to cover under other items, but there's something I neglected to do right at the beginning. As you know, we have a system in our AG's office of having O'Hara fellows come and work for the AG's office for a couple of years. Our most recently inducted attorney in that program has been Melissa Reynolds. Melissa was actually scheduled to receive her swearing in or oath today because she did pass the bar, but she arranged to have that done early. So she is now an official member of the bar and an official attorney, and she'll be taking on some of the workload from Steve Alder and John Robinson now. Congratulations, Melissa.
Welcome aboard. It's a wild but interesting ride.
The next item, we'll cover these things under other, but I had asked Steve Schneider to come up and give you a briefing on some of the things that he's been working on recently.
Thank you.
Good morning, members of the board. One of the items John wanted me to provide an update to you on was our customer survey. We've been conducting customer surveys now for 8 consecutive years. We consider it a valuable part of the input to our program. And it just completed last week with the summary data provided the day thereafter. And if you'd like to view those results, it looks like a chart like this, but it's on our division website. I know most of you have tablets. So under the top hot topic button, you'll find this chart already. So the results this year, we did finished with a rating or an average composite score within 1% of our all-time high rating. So we feel good about that. It was a rating of 4.25 on a 1 to 5 scale, with 5 being highest. Just for your refresher, we asked customers to rate us on the timeliness of our services, the accuracy of our information, the helpfulness of our employees, their expertise in addressing the questions, and the ease at obtaining information. With those ratings, we also receive or provide the opportunity for customers to give comments, and that's an extremely valuable part. The governor's office asked us to pursue measures where we pursue efficiency, but we figure that understanding our customers' input to us and taking their suggestions and trying to implement those not only provides efficiency in processes depending on the input, but we want a satisfied customer as a state agency. So that is why we consider this so valuable. We did receive 188 replies, which is more than our 7-year average for number of replies. As a slight recap, we primarily include like permittees. For oil and gas, they include people that attend the collaborative group meetings, as you're familiar with. Companies that do e-reporting. We include attorneys who present before the board. We include board members, yourself. We include members of our informal rule review group. So that would include Sierra Club, SUA are also able to comment, and we keep it on our website for 40 days. So
that again on the website. I was just.
Oh, sorry. It's on the main page, Hot Topics. There's a bar along the center. Yes. So we now have 107 comments to go through, and as of Monday, we sent those out to the oil and gas program and the mining program. And so to complete the loop, we have each of those associate directors report back at a management meeting in November to say, what did you think of the comments? Were there comments that you can implement? Of course, some of those are complimentary of specific employees or the program in general, but sometimes they are constructive comments that we can implement. So we think this is an important way to gauge our customer feedback. And I didn't mention industry associations are obviously also included. And Lowell Braxton, sitting behind us, he makes sure that the Denver office and their member companies all are reminded that to provide input to that survey. So we appreciate Lowell's efforts too. Are there any questions about the customer survey?
So on a scale of 1 to 5, I understand, is that correct?
Yes.
What was the score for this year?
4.25.
Wow.
Yeah. And I guess we'd say it's going to be hard to please everyone all of the time. We are balancing on the development and environmental protection teeter-totter every day. And so anyway, we follow the laws of the passed by the legislature and the policies passed by this board and do our best to meet the public's needs. Any other questions?
On this or?
On this particular survey.
Okay, I have you other items that we.
I have one other item.
Okay.
One other item, John wanted me to bring the board up to date that we've had an increasing rate of opportunities to comment on federal policy actions and federal environmental impact statements. And just to give you a quick snapshot of that, in 2014 we had 5 matters that we felt were worthy to comment on, the majority of those being EISs. Of course, the economics in the industry have changed, and maybe some of those EISs are slowing down a little bit, but with 5 items to comment in 2014 on federal matters, in 2015 we're looking at 13 versus 5 in the prior year. Now, we see a greater number of federal, just what I'd say pure federal policy type matters that are coming out at this point in time. I don't think we're so naive that we wouldn't think that the end of the current administration next year might have an impact on that. But I think that the federal agencies are looking to update their policies. Some of those have been quite aged, and but should they be updated to the extent that as proposed? That's one of the questions. When we look at these policies, we're trying to look at, you know, are the facts accurately stated? Are the assumptions valid? Are there reasonable alternatives provided? Do the recommendations follow state laws passed by the legislature? Those are some of the things that we're looking at. And we do provide our programs the opportunity to input, and then I review those, as well as we have Emily Brown, who is providing about, on average, 1 day a week. She's a recent political science graduate who also has worked in Representative Chaffetz's office this year.
Emily Berry.
Oh, Emily Berry. Sorry, I said Emily Brown. Sorry. Emily Berry. My mistake. So, you know, we have a high number of these this year. The stream protection rule, as Chris Hansen's probably well aware, you know, 2,000 to 3,000 pages in length, you know, with a 90-day turnaround. It's quite a massive effort. It's the BLM and other federal agencies, OSM included, you know, do need to hire contractors to prepare these documents, and I've now learned that some of the parties reviewing these documents hire contractors and consultants to review them. So anyway, it's becoming kind of the chase of consultants, and sometimes there are legal actions that are pursued, as Mr. Robinson has talked with you about. So anyway, in addition to those 13 matters we're looking at this year, you know, there's public land initiative, the Bears Ears matter, the air quality, power plant rules, the governor's executive order on sage grouse. I didn't count those in the 160% increase over last year. So anyway, we have items coming up, the Moab master leasing process due November 12th, the BLM measurement of oil, new standards, November 20th, and we do report back to the Public Land Policy Coordinating Office, who then prepares the official governor's letter back to the federal agency. In December, we have BLM's measurement of gas new standards, and just Monday, the National Park Service came out with modified regulations for comment for operations near parks as it relates to oil and gas. And so they're even looking at expanding their bonding limits. They're looking at even oil and gas properties that are outside the park boundaries but are near the parks, looking at their regulatory authority in that area. So the challenges on policy commenting continue. So John, is there anything else you'd like to?
Well, I just wanted to say that if you had asked me 10 years ago that we would be spending as much time as we are now doing these kinds of reviews, I would have said, you know, we don't want to dedicate any of our valuable staff time to this. But sometimes we find that when an action comes out, that we may be the only ones in state government who understand the impacts to the extractive industries, and it's pretty important that we sit up and bark when those things happen, and we let people know this is what the impact and effect might be.
That completes my report.
I'll go on and handle one other item, and then I'll turn it back to the board. This is kind of in line with the next month's agenda. As you know, we don't have a meeting in November. We combine our November and December board meeting during the first week of December. So that board hearing is going to happen on December 9th. Actually, it's the second Wednesday of the month. But we often have our board holiday social the evening before. And I was visiting with several staff members, and we were brainstorming on, you know, how can we find a way for more of our staff and people within Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining to interact with the board. So we looked at a model that the CIPLA board tends to use, and that's more of an open house. So I'm going to propose to you, and if you'll accept this, I think we've already started making plans in this direction. I'm going to propose to you that rather than have an off-site dinner somewhere, that we do in a late afternoon open house reception here in the building for the board and staff as the holiday function. It would be an opportunity to invite not only staff, but maybe more people who would interact with the board on a regular basis and just kind of celebrate the season as more of a reception. We would make sure that we have some hors d'oeuvres and refreshments to serve. We would make it informal, so you wouldn't need to wear ties or dress up or anything like that. But we thought that might be a nice way to involve more people and keep the costs appropriate for doing something like that. So if you want to give me feedback now or sometime during the day, that's great. But we'd like to move in that direction and maybe have a late afternoon open house here in the building.
Okay, late afternoon defined as 4 p.m.
Yeah, probably 4 to 6, something like that, so that we can catch some of the staff before they go home for the day, and maybe other folks who want to come after work. This would be the night of Tuesday, December 8th.
Or could it be the evening of December 9th?
After the board meeting?
Well, the only danger with that just makes it one-day activity, but the danger is that the hearing could possibly go into that time. And
I think from the schedule we've seen so far, there aren't that many items on the December hearing. Is that correct?
And then if there's people from
Julianne's saying 4.
if there's people from out of town that could rather make a late visit, state agencies, we could have other state agencies invited. What do you think? Day of the hearing then? Then we're here, and say 3 to 5 or 3 to 6 or 4 to 6 or?
Let me ask Julianne, now we have this room reserved for the board meeting, right? So we could just extend that for the evening. Okay.
Is the feeling then that we'd do it on the 9th?
9th, the day of the board meeting.
From 4 to 6?
Yeah, that would be great.
And I think that'd be great. 4 to
Thank you,
6:30.
board members.
4 to 6:30.
Okay, sounds
That
good.
way we make sure that if there's good conversation going, it doesn't end.
Folks could still depart and have, make dinner plans on their own after that.
Sounds good. Okay.
Well, thank you very much. That really is the extent of our briefing to you this morning. I'll turn time back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you very much. Before you leave, would you just take a minute and explain how the conservation fee and the conservation fund works for your
Absolutely.
agency?
This was kind of a change made back in, I think, the late 90s, early 2000s. But as you know, the oil and gas program in the division relies on a fee or a tax charged to production of oil and gas in the state. And it's 0.2% of the value of that production. The valuation is the same valuation that's done by the Tax Commission for collection of severance tax. So whatever their valuation method is for that, they use the same thing for the 0.2% that we rely on. In the past, the monies have ebbed and flowed. In the early 2000s, as I indicated, we made the change to say that collected amount would be available for use by the oil and gas program up to the appropriated amount that we get from the legislature on an annual basis. Funds that would not be used flow over into the general fund at the end of the fiscal year. We are able to retain a small reserve fund, and it was capped at $750,000, and it's been that ever since year 2000. And the idea at the time was a $750,000 reserve fund would allow for at least half a year of the budget to be covered. That way, if oil prices dramatically reduced and that conservation collection dropped to very little, we would still have at least half a year of the oil and gas budget to be able to operate on and give us some time to continue our activities. Obviously, since then, inflation, prices have increased. The oil and gas budget is more than that at this point, and the reserve fund is no longer a 50% number. It's probably fallen to something more like 25% of our annual budget. But it's there. It can be used by us. We've really never had to dip into it in the past 15 years. But with oil prices where they are now, it is likely even in the current fiscal year that we will have to use some of those reserve funds to maintain the operations of the oil and gas program. That's kind of how it works, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, any questions or comments from the board member for the staff?
I just wanted to ask one question about the stream protection rule. You had mentioned, Steve, how loud did you guys bark on that?
We prepared a cover letter that was 3 pages in length, and additional technical comments 5 pages in length. When the report came out of the Public Lands Policy Office, I'd say they used over 95% of our comments. I listened to some of the U.S. Senate Natural Resource and Environment hearing. I listened to it last night at home. That occurred yesterday morning in Washington, D.C., and Senator Murkowski, I think, is that her name, from Alaska? I'd say many of her concerns that were identified were included in our letter. And so we feel like we did, for the time allowed, we did a good job on that.
You also need to know, Chris, that we have had a long history of trying to work with OSM on those rules. 4 years ago, we enlisted as a cooperating agency in that process. Our experience was dismal and dysfunctional. OSM didn't give us much time to review documents. They didn't include many of our concerns in what they ultimately produced. But at some point, and I think you recall in this process, OSM shut down communications with the states and other stakeholders. So earlier this year, we sent a letter to OSM withdrawing our name as a cooperating agency. We didn't want a report to come out by them that appeared to have our blessing as a state. So it's had some history and some difficult history. And the result of what Steve produced was trying to capture some of that history, as well as say what you've developed as a rule is not going to work in the western states. Yes, they were.
Were filed on Monday, yes.
We'd be happy to share you a copy of that, too.
Yes, I listened to his testimony last night, yes.
I'll get it.
Thank you all. Any other questions? Thank you. It's now the time and place for the public comment portion of our briefing. If anyone is here that would like to make a comment on a matter within our jurisdiction, we'd open that to an open mic. Seeing no one jumping up or waving their hand, we're going to take a break then until 9 a.m. Thank you.